The next topic I want to talk to you about is the most popular and useful libraries for projects. So what are the project depends? It's something that you would import, you would require or import with the ES6 import statement. So something that you bring into your project, something that your project depends on. It requires that package. It's not going to work without that package. And typically, we install it with npm I or npm install. You would install it locally into your project folder. So let's see some of those libraries. Webpack. That's right, we install Webpack locally. Why? Because that will allow you to have your local version. And let's say you have two other projects and they using a lower version of Webpack, earlier version. So that means you can quickly switch between those versions because all of them are local. So you don't have any conflicts. So Webpack, it's for building static assets. It's for front-end development, JavaScript, CSS, images. A lot of things can be bundled, can be prepared for production because in HTTP 1 and HTTP 2, we have to do certain things to optimize the loading time, to optimize the performance. So we do not ship just the files with which we work. We usually ship completely different files, even in a different language. If you use ClojureScript, if you use CoffeeScript, you're not going to run them in the browser. You need to convert them into the ECMAScript, into the ES5 or ES6. So Webpack definitely is the way to go. Gulp and Grant, they're a little bit older alternatives. Webpack is the most cutting edge. And Rollup is another one. So Rollup, Grant, Gulp, they are alternatives. But I don't want to confuse you too much. Webpack is the most popular tool right now for the front-end development. The next popular tool, which often goes hand-to-hand with Webpack, it's called Babel. So what Babel allows you to do, it will allow you to convert your JavaScript, the new ECMAScript, such as ES 2018, and convert it into older code which is compatible with older versions of browsers such as Internet Explorer 11. So Babel is great for when you need to support those old browsers but you want to write in the new code for new browsers. And also we use Babel to convert the React JSX into regular JavaScript because JSX cannot run on the browser. So we use it for React pretty much. In 90% of the projects, you would see Babel. That's what the React team recommends to use. The next library, my favorite library to make HTTP requests. So HTTP requests, you have to make them from your browser JavaScript to the server to get some data. And also you have to make them from your server to other services, to other servers to get the data, to add some data, to work with external third-party service or your internal service to your internal API. Axios is great because it's not as low level as Fetch API. So Fetch API, that's a promise-based method that's available in the modern browsers, not the old browser, but in the modern. But guess what? You have to do a lot of things yourself. So last week I just taught a class on Fetch API and we had to stringify our object. We had to add headers. It wasn't pretty. It was like 10 or 15 lines of code. It's still better than to use jQuery or something like that, but still, don't use Fetch API, use Axios because Axios is fantastic. It gives you a lot of things for free. It allows you to work with and make those requests and process them. So basically, it will give you the JSON back. It will create headers for you. You don't have to mess around with those low-level stuff. My favorite web framework is Express, and I'm not the only one. It's the most popular Node.js web framework. You can build traditional web applications with server-side rendering, but you can also build some nice, good-looking single-page application or thick client applications. So the way you do it, you build RESTful APIs. That's what most of us do. Or now we also build GraphQL APIs, GraphQL servers. So Express, the go-to framework for building Node applications, Node web application. Mongoose. Mongoose is your go-to library for object document mapping. What is object document mapping? It's when you have a layer of abstraction over the native database functions and methods. Why you would want that? Well, because you don't want to work with the database methods. You want to work with a nicer interface. The interface that also does something extra for you. And you would have the schema, you would have the validation, you would have Mongoose models. You can also create your own methods on those models. For example, there is some business logic and some operation which you do over and over, but it's very specific. It's not going to be in the library. No worries, you can create your own method with Mongoose. It's a full-blown ODM, Object Document Mapper library. You can compare ODM in terms of philosophy to ORM, Object Relational Mapper. So you work with objects, you don't work with the primitive, low-level native methods of MongoDB native driver. Sequelizer, it's similar to Mongoose, but for PostgreSQL. PostgreSQL is the relational database. It's a SQL database. And Mongoose, that was for MongoDB. Sequelizer, it's for the PostgreSQL. It's Object Relational Mapper, ORM. You work with objects. You don't write those query statements yourself for the most part. Unless you want to create a method, then yes, you would need to write a SQL statement. Anyway, Sequelizer, in any medium-sized or large-sized project, you should use ORM or ODM. Socket.io. Socket.io, it's a great real-time library which supports, obviously, WebSockets. WebSockets is the go-to technology for real-time apps. And with Socket.io, what you can do, you can basically build those real-time applications, and you don't have to use a different library for the front end. So the WebSocket API supported by most modern browsers, but it's still good to have a library in case the browser, it's an old browser, and maybe you would get a nicer syntax as well. So with Socket.io, you just use one library on the front end and on the back end as well. Isn't it nice? That's because Node.js is JavaScript. We can do that